today, and let me remind you, we will be discussing how to set up a port community system. We will talk a little bit about the regulations and the legislations necessary to support the digitalization of the port processes. And then we will also have a presentation distinguishing and pointing out the features between a maritime single window and a port community system, which in fact are two very different things. This is imperative to all the ports in the world, and in the Americas, people from the Caribbean, the region, and from Latin America have been working on digitizing their port processes before the pandemic. And then, of course, the pandemic emphasized the need for paperless transactions and no contact transactions. So it gave digitalization a strong push. And then, of course, we are under the directive of the IMO's 1st of January of 2024. Every port should have a maritime single window in order to participate in global trade. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to say that I was just telling our speakers that we have over 290 people registered from 41 countries and territories from North, Central, South America, the English-speaking Caribbean, Europe, and even Turkey in the Middle East, if you will, has registered. And we have, so this is a topic that is of worldwide interest. And I'm very, very happy to have with us today the experts and representatives that we have. We should be expecting, she said that she would be perhaps in another call, but we have Inga Morton, who is the general manager of the IPCSA. We also have with us Nico de Caover, Secretary General for PCA, and he's also a member of the Industry Advisory Board at the Digital Standards Initiative of the International Chamber of Commerce. He's an expert member of the United Nations CEFACT, Transport and Logistics Domain, and he is a member of the Data Collaboration Committee at IAPH, sister organization, the International Association of Ports of Harbor. So welcome, Nico. Thank you very much for your time and your insights. We also have Javier Gallardo. Javier Gallardo is currently IPCSA's chairman, but he's also the chief executive officer of the Port of Barcelona. So, you know, that's one of, as we know, our most important ports in the Mediterranean and Spain, especially in cruises and so forth, but they've been digitized for a while. We also have my good friend, Mr. Hans Rook, former chairman of IPCSA. Right now, he's an ambassador. He's gotten to this status where people just know him. And like Angelina Jolie was an ambassador for the United States. Well, Hans Rook is an ambassador for IPCSA. Good to see you, my friend. And we also have Hervé Schneider. Hervé Schneider is obviously an IPCSA member, but he is the director of the services department at SOGE. And SOGE, as you know, is a French association that works from the port of Le Havre in France, and very good partners of ours. So thank you very much, Hervé. And then we also have, last but not least, Mr. Rommel Edwards, who is the manager for digital innovation and development at Barbados Port Incorporated. It is important that I mention that Barbados Port Incorporated has implemented a fully working port community system that they themselves wrote and developed from the ground up, and it has become a role model and a best practice to be followed in the region. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. We will have very quick yet very dynamic presentations with a lot of content that is for you to digest. It is important that I point out that Monica Blanco, who I thank very much for the organization of the webinar, and she will be moderating, she will put on the chat the address of the portal, where now that we have the permission of the experts at hand, you will be able to find today's presentations as well as today's recording, in case you need to see it again, in the portal, in the SIP portal, and Monica will go ahead and do that. So we're very excited about this. We are happy to be able to contribute to knowledge transfer and best practice presentation in the region by our experts here. And since I not yet see Inga, who I know was otherwise engaged, I'm going to give the floor to Nico so that he can say a few words as requested by Inga. My friend, you have the floor.
Yep. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you for opening this webinar. As IPCSA, we are, of course, very excited to work together with you, the Inter-American Committee on Ports, to see and discuss about PCS implementations and developments. We all know that port community systems are very relevant in the maritime and logistics industry, certainly in this age of digitalization, and that's regardless of the physical location. It's everywhere in the world. Wherever you use a PCS, of course, the same foundational principles apply, but you can always have some regional specifics and points and weaknesses on different regions, and that's a bit what we are trying to discuss here together with you. We have, as IPCSA, we are proud to have members in Canada, the US, also Brazil, and we have 2 members in the Caribbean. Of course, Romel is here from Barbados, and we also have the Port of Saint Martin. Of course, we want to strengthen our position as association also in the region over there. For that, I was 2 weeks ago also attending the PMAC conference, where everybody was talking, when it comes to digitalization, everybody's talking about sharing data, about port community systems, maritime single windows, etc. So I think it's very relevant to organize this webinar, and we are proud to assist you in this. So over to you, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Nico, and thank you to the association, to ISPCA for your commitment and dedication. As Hans knows, and I'm sure he remembers, we have been working with you guys. We exchanged memberships, I'm going to say, just as the pandemic started, if I'm not mistaken, Hans, and we have had very fruitful and very productive relationship, always trying to do like today, to offer knowledge, to offer the expertise to the people at hand. I see that people in the chat are saying hello from everywhere, from Mexico, from Turkey, from Paraguay. And I think I wasn't going to do this, but I think it would be a disservice if I don't read the list of participant countries which are on the chat. And so if you allow me, my friends, I would like to welcome the representatives of national port authorities, local port authorities, ports, terminals, and other businesses that join us today from Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Argentina, Barbados, Belgium, Bolivia, Bonaire, Brazil, Bulgaria, Chile, Colombia, Curacao, Dominica, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, El Salvador, France, Grenada, Guatemala, Guyana, Honduras, Jamaica, Latvia, Mexico, the Netherlands, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Romania, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Spain, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Turkey, as I said, Turks and Caicos Islands, the United States, Uruguay, and Venezuela. Welcome all of you to this wonderful seminar, and thank you all of you for your interest and participation in this. Costa Rica has just joined on, which I didn't read, and we're almost 100 strong right now. So with that, and not to take time away from any of our presenters, I know we're already running a little bit behind the schedule, but I pray that everybody will just continue to be here due to the interest of this presentation. So that said, I now turn the floor over to my friend and colleague Monica Blanco from the Secretariat, so that the rest of the webinar can be developed. I'm going to ask the speakers that are not speaking to please turn off our cameras so that the attention can be fully presented on the speaker at hand. So muchas gracias a todos, muito obrigado, merci beaucoup, tantissime grazie, evcharisto, I will spasiba, and I will see you in the question and answer session. Thank you very much, Monica. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jorge, and thank you, Nico, for the warm welcome. It is an honor to be moderating this webinar, and without further ado, I would like to start by introducing our first speaker, Nico de Cauer. As you know, he's the Secretary General of the International Port Community Systems Association, IPCSA. Thank you so much for being here, Nico. It is a pleasure to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica. Do you see my my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Hello, everybody. Good day from wherever you are. I heard a lot of countries, so that's it's wonderful to have this great audience, this big audience, and also great audience. So I am Nico de Cauer, Secretary General of IPCSA, and I will give in the next 5 minutes introduction of the association before we move into the next presentations from the other experts. IPCSA, who are we as an association? It's clear that if we talk about sharing more and better data for the whole supply chain, that is a need that is certainly there for and relevant for a sustainable, secure, and seamless trade and logistics. For that, we are actually there to facilitate and to lobby towards global, regional, and also local administrations to emphasize and facilitate the importance and the relevance of port community systems and single windows. And they play a vital role in the digital ecosystem nowadays. I think it was mentioned before that certainly the pandemic had a faster pace of digitalization amongst us, and so the relevance of port community systems and single windows is getting bigger and bigger each day and each year. So for that, as an association, we want to act in the common interest of port community system operators, single window operators, and also sea and airport authorities. How do we do that? Throughout several goals. We want to see and talk about the recognition of our members into the international electronic exchange of information, and there, where necessary, they can consult us on measures which are likely to affect port community systems. Also on the local level, we are facilitating our members in the stakeholder buy-in, because the port community system, it will come in the other presentations, is not just about start to program something, but it starts with a very important governance process. And therefore, you need that stakeholder buy-in. Like I already said, we want to facilitate and strengthen the international and regional position of port community system and single windows through the different global, regional, and local administrations everywhere in the world. So that relevance of port community systems is strongly emphasized. We also do that, of course, by promoting data exchange and that through international, through the highest possible use of international standards to be used in trade and logistics. So in one glimpse, we have about 50 members operating in more than 50 countries, because some members operate in several countries as well. Like I said, we are open not only because the association is called IPCSA, but you don't really only need to be a port community system. We're also open for airport and seaport authorities, because we see that a lot of the processes, and not all of the port community system processes, are covered by the port authorities, but a lot of them do. And we will have one of the topics on the maritime single window, which is not only a PCS, but mainly also an authority aspect. And in that also, for these authorities, we are open for membership. This is an overview of our members, like I already mentioned in the beginning, in the opening. We have in the American continent, we have Canada, the US, Brazil, and also in the Caribbean. We have 2 members. A bit in an overview where we facilitate and lobby the importance of the port community system in the regulations. We are an acknowledged NGO by the UN, and we have UN ECOSOC status, also acknowledged NGO at the International Maritime Organization, the IMO. And we have strategic relationships with the World Economic Forum, also this SIP, Inter-American Committee on Ports. That's why we are doing this webinar, and also the International Chamber of Commerce and the development banks and a lot of others. So through these relationships, strategic relationships, we facilitate our members in regulation and business process work. Very short, some initiatives where we working on or already have worked on is the global PCS study. I think that this will also come in. I will not give too much detail in that. I think it's also in one of the presentations. We did a global study, not only describing theories, but the input of all of our members were there to have some concrete how you do an implementation with concrete facts and figures. That's all in there. We have Protect, which is the Port Message Design Group, who implemented the international standards messages on IFT-DGN for dangerous goods, and also for waste declarations, also an international standard on that. We also facilitated and developed the network of trusted networks, where I'll come that in another slide. I'll come to that on cross-border data exchange. And at this moment, we're also working towards the next IMO FAL committee in 2024 on PCS guidelines, which are next to the Maritime Single Window guidelines. The PCS guidelines will emphasize what exactly is a PCS, where is the distinction with a Maritime Single Window, and which are the guidelines that you need to follow for implementation of PCS. This on the network of trusted networks. That's what we were considering. What do we know and use every day? That's a mobile phone. You choose your apps out of the catalog of standard apps on Android or iPhone or so, and you start using that. And about based on those same principles, we try to facilitate a governance platform. It's not a data. Sorry, that was a bit too quick. We are facilitating the data exchange through the same principles with the digital handshake, which you actually also interact on your mobile device. And through those principles, we actually built a governance platform. So not a data platform, no data is stored on that, where we facilitate port-to-port cross-border exchange. And that was a bit in a fast pace, the overview of what the association is and where it stands for. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you so much, Nico, for the IPCSA introduction and for sharing the very important initiatives that IPCSA is carrying out in the port sector. And now I would like to continue by introducing our next speaker, Javier Gallardo, who is the chairman of IPCSA. Javier, it is an honor to have you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Monica, for your introduction. I hope that you can see now my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Well, first of all, thank you, Thip, for inviting us, and also thank you for all you of attending this seminar. My presentation, I will start from the beginning, just from the first principles. The first question is, what is a PCS? So let's start with from the very beginning. On the top side, on the top part of the screen, you can see the diagram where it looks, there is the image of the bottom line of from the warehouse, domestic transportation, and you can see that means is the flows of the goods. So it's very important that in logistics, basically, there are three things that they are moving: are the goods or the asset, let's say goods or physical or persons. There is the money and the information. So in order to make logistics, these three elements are key. You can see that in order to move the goods from one part of the world to another, it was needed just to exchange information. Then you can see there are a lot of actors that are taking part of this relationship, that from the exporter to the importer, land transportation, the maritime, the ship. The lines that you can see on red and blue means information flows. You can see that there are many lines. That means there was a lot of communication in different formats and in different kind of documents. So then it creates the need in the, let's say, in the last century, in the 80s, where the first PCS were born. The first implementation of the PCS in Europe started in 1980, 1982, as you can see on the top of the screen. It was the need to create something that helped to help the community, to the port community, to exchange information. And it was really important to make the to create a system that helps to communicate and exchange data. One of the first things that we did in the ISCA in the very beginning was to make a clear definition what is a PCS. You can see on the left side of your screen the definition that we created for the PCS. I'm going just to read briefly some of the parts, because I think it's very important to remark some of the points. It says that it's a neutral and open electronic platform. It's very electronic platform enabling intelligent and secure exchange information between public and private stakeholders in order to improve the competitive position of the sea and airports community. As you can see, that I have highlighted the word neutral and open. That means that it's very significant that the PCS should be considered as a third trusted party in the ports, in order that all the actors rely on the PCS and they trust their data to be exchanged in a secure and a safe way. Open, because need to be interconnected, means that it need to be flexible in order to accept as different formats of different types of information. Of course, there is a part of the standardization that I believe that later on our friend Hans will explain a bit later the process of how to set up a PCS, that the standardization and harmonization of the process is a key element. And also I want to highlight that to improve the competitive position of the seaport and the airports, that is key, because the benefit of the PCS will come if the ports become more competitive. And also important highlight to distinguish between public and private stakeholders. This is one of the main difference with the single windows, that in single window we have communication between public and private, but one of the major difference with the PCS is that we enable communication between private and private. The B2B absolutely is one of the most challenging concepts and issues that we need to sort it out in a daily basis. So besides of talking about the PCS, what is the benefits of the PCS are mostly highlighted in that slide. You can see that of course, it creates value creation. It creates a greater reliability and more efficient and total transparency of the goods through the port logistics chains. Of course, that the standardization is key. There is a reduction of time of the process, more resilient, more competitiveness. I wanted to enter with more examples of the benefit, instead of reading out loud this slide that you can have it later on. I'll give you some examples of a study that we did in Barcelona last year about which is the impact of the PCS and which is the impact of the digital transformation in the Port of Barcelona. So we make the study that the digitalization and in concrete, the PCS have a huge impact in the short term. The impact on the economy was huge we make some calculation that counts that 450 million euros was saved every year due to the digital transformation, and the 63% of this amount of money became from the PCS in terms to the optimization or the telemedicine of the documentary process. Also, another huge impact was the reduction of the 13% of the total pollution. The CO2 footprint was reduced dramatically. And the other point that I wanted to highlight in this presentation is it's always said that digitalization may save a lot of jobs, so there will be some social impact. And we did we have an important outcome that during these 10 years where this study was done, the digital transformation saved 2,700 jobs. But on the other side, it creates 264. So this is very important to highlight that the digital transformation not only saves job, that is something that can be very dangerous or can be like a concern or worried, but also the digital transformation creates new jobs, more valuable jobs in the future. And this is something that we really checked in our study. This study can be found in the PeerNext portbarcelona.com.cat in that website. Sometimes it's also difficult to see which is the impact of the PCS in the past, before and after the implementation. In our association, we have had the chance to review in new implementation, which is the impact of the PCS. You can see that, for instance, in the case of Odessa, Ukraine, we have reduced dramatically the container dwell times, also in Morocco and also in Sukuk. So this is very impressive how the use of the PCS can affect on the reduction of the container dwell times when we combine the optimization of the process with the implementation of the electronic interchange of information. Well, that's all for my side, and I give back the floor to Monica. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Javier, for this excellent presentation. It's greatly appreciated, and all that you are sharing today will be, of course, very useful to the SIP community that is joining us today. Thank you so much. And now I would like to continue with our next speaker, Hans Ruck, who is Ambassador of IPCSA. Thank you so much for joining us, Hans. The floor is yours.
I have to unmute myself and see the presentation on the screen, I think. You can see it?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome also from my side, well, you know, see my title these days, Ambassador of IPCSA. I'm still very keen on to be joining myself within the organization and to assist and support you as our members or our future members, hopefully, with the ins and outs about how to set up a PCS. How to set up a PCS within 10 minutes? That's impossible, you understand. We will have a next part 2 later this year, but the first part I would like to start with the fundamental things. Well, you just heard Javier saying the vision and the mission things of IPCSA, but he has also mentioned some words that was in Peru, but I'm mistaken, Javier, 2015, 2016, like that, and we still use it because it's so true to say a port community system is not an IT project, but a change management project. Really, change management is key. The involvement of the community from the start is essential for the success of having a PCS that fulfills your requirements. And the community includes all stakeholders, and that's huge when you look for the stakeholders that are in the business of the shipping industry. It's about 40 actually. Actually, all parties involved in that transport logistics in and around the port, they have an important role, either distributing data or track and trace or whatever, also from public like customs, health organizations, and not to forget, of course, the first in line, the Port Authority. What steps do you need to take in order to create a PCS or a single window for your port? Well, we described already a long time ago, and still valid, a document called How to Develop a PCS, and another document that was for PCS for small and medium-sized ports. And actually, the latest document, that small or medium-sized port, is very difficult to describe, because the processes, whether you are a huge port, a big port, like I'm coming from Rotterdam, or a very small port, the processes are the same. You have to deal with customs, you have to deal with vessels in, vessel out, handling of the cargo, etc. So there's not so much difference, but it's maybe good to read. You can find it on our website, and you can download the information and see what's in it. The first book about the development of a PCS, it starts with this graphic, and you see there are 12 points in the graphic that we have that we are mentioning, and only on port number 10 you see development groups. That means that on 10 you start with the IT development. That's what Javier said. It's not an IT system, right? You have to do a number of steps to come to the steps that you say, okay, now I'm going to develop an IT system, or to find a vendor that helps me to support in adopting the system and to change it to the needs of your ports. So the very first 10 steps are very important, and of course, the 11th point, as you see, use existing knowledge of port community systems. That is what we do within our members. Our members are very open, and Rommel is now online from Barbados. Later on, he will emphasize it, what he is doing. And we have had a role a couple of years back already to sit together with him and the other people from Barbados to support them as much as possible, to have the right, to have the train on the rail in the right format, on the right moment, on the right aspects. Two aspects today I would like to emphasize. You see here the governance and the change management. One of the things I sometimes discover when I talk to people is that they actually want to start with the process and operating. And then they say, when you build a house, do you start with building the rooftop, or do you start with building the fundamental things? Well, and that is an eye-opener for them to say, no, we don't start with the rooftop. They say, okay, don't start operating a system without knowing what you're going to do. So first of all, you have to go through a certain number of steps, like governance and change management. And change management will never end, I can tell you. About the governance, who takes the initiative? You will see that in most cases, the initiative is taken by the port authorities, because it's their aim to have the best utilization of the port infrastructure. They do have quays, they do have waterways, trains, inland traffic possibilities, everything. But what is missing is the logistic part in their critical infrastructure. And that's what a PCS is meant for, to seen as a critical factor to reach this goal. And although in most cases it is their initiative, still decisions have to be taken about this establishing. Who will be the shareholder? It can be the Port Authority. It need not to be the Port Authority. They want to have the system, but who will be the shareholder? Who will be will it be a separate department within the Port Authority? In some cases it is. Or will it be a separate public or either private entity or a public-private combination? Will the scope be a business model based on non-profits and profit? Just to name a few of those government aspects that you need to bear in mind when you start developing PCS. Because when you don't have the governance, it's very difficult for consultancies and IT parties or whatever to have the right persons, the key persons that will be the pivot in the whole development of the PCS from the very start till the moment the first parts are going into operations. So that governance, the fundamental of building a PCS is one of the most important steps to be taken. Another one, change management, the commitment and willingness to change by all of us. Well, change management is all in our life. We started with typewriters. We went to office management. That's a change, right? You had your IT systems for keyboard input, print output. It's changing from EDI to EDI out. It's interoperability. Every time a change again. So change management is, let's say, the most important part, not only during the very first start of the PCS, but during the whole setup of the systems and whatever you do. So a part of that is stakeholder management towards when you look at change management. Of course, the important part is the human factor. That's change management. Support and commitment for the stakeholders, it's really essential. Without this, it is useless to start development. Sometimes people say, I can do it alone. That's much faster. But doing something alone, it goes faster. But doing together, you come further, right? So please be very keen that from the very beginning, you have to stay the right stakeholders around the table and to sit together with them and develop and discuss a number of things. I come back to that later. But also very good is say what you do and do what you say. Be transparent in your communication. So important in the things. Essential aspects, neutrality. It's mentioned by Javier as well, and trust. Trust in the party that will operate the PCS. Emphasize that the PCS is meant to fine-tune and enhance the port processes. And also emphasize that it's not meant to interfere in the business competitions. Because each and every party of your shipping agents, carriers, terminals, they do have a certain view, they have the business models, they have the strategy. And it's not the way, it's not the intention of a PCS development or a PCS operator to interfere in that process. No, it's only to enhance the port process to the maximum. You saw the last slide of Javier. Data sharing is key for better performance and data quality. And data sharing is a big word. You should go into detail and zoom into what it is and what we're talking about. I got a question a couple of months back from somebody who says, it's my data, why should I share? Well, basically, it's the best question I've ever had. I can come back later on the questionnaire if you want. One source of information, so the same information is used by all stakeholders, as well business and government agencies, for instance, right? Involvement of the community, just to highlight a few bullets. Involve them from the very first moment, the stakeholders. Try to imagine the way they think. When you send the message out, sit on the chair and look how should you receive that message? Is it open? Is it okay? Is it in their line? Is it what they want to? On the second line, you have to present it later so you can go into the bullets more and more. But listen to the stakeholders. A number of times I met with consultancies that are able to send information, how good they are, what they can do, and whatever they can make for you. But listen is much more important. The balance of the communication should be 30% of the consultant and 70% of the communication should come from you as the stakeholders in the port. You are the one who know the business. You know the processes and you know your pain points. And it's good to have consultants that are coming from the market in the transport and logistic industry because you have a match and you can mirror what your thoughts are, what their thoughts are, and you come to the right endpoint. Change management aspects. Trust is key. There it is again. Change from bilateral communication to share information is a transition for the people in the mindset. It's from verbal communication, have a phone call for hours maybe, instead of using notepads, EDI, machine-to-machine communication. Physical distribution of the documents, that was the paper documents, the huge pile of paper documents. Think about sustainability. To electronic data exchange. And don't forget the physical transport and visits to the various offices in and around your port. That is not necessary anymore when you do it digitally. You can add a lot of value to yourself even and do your business partners in helping each other to make the use of the PCS service as transparent as possible to your end users. During my career, that's already 52 years now, I did give masterclasses. And one of the things in the masterclass I always say, I don't want to hear from you, we have always done it this way. Think where you're going to aim for. Think what you're going to do the new way. Always keep a window open in your mind for new ideas. Don't close your minds. IPCSA is there to support you. IPCSA has carried out a PCS global study. It has been mentioned by Nico already briefly, and I'll come back to that now. This study represents an overview of all aspects involved in development of the PCS. It's a real document with great depth in the processes to be performed and described from practice, really from practice. No theory, no high university content, purely as is. And why it has been done is because our members were asked many, many times by many consultants about the how and what of a PCS. You can imagine that it cost a lot of expensive hours for all the people in the PCS operating to inform the consultants about the value of information, free of charge. And you know, the consultants bear that information in mind, take it with them, and they charge newcomers with that amount. I'm sure there are consultants online, and if they don't agree, no, don't worry. Just have a message in the chat and we can talk about it later or another day, no problem at all. But that's what's happening. And that's why all our members said, please make a PCS study. We will give you the information. We will send the information to you and you can make out a document. And it's a very, very valuable document for everybody. Here is just a summary of that PCS global study. You can find this on our website. You see the aspects, change management, there it is again, governance and business models, PCS services, technologies, and law and regulations. Law and regulations will be discussed later today by RFA. So it's this is only a few highlights, but in the study you find more and more. How can you get it? License conditions for the cost of the PCS study. Well, one license for own use of the study. That's the basis. And our existing members can get it for free because they gave the input and they are our members, so they can get the members for free. Those that are not members yet, they can obtain the study for the same price as a year cost for a member fee, or they can become member, and then we can see how we deal with that. And of course, consultancies, but that's another topic again, can buy a one-time license on request. That's another topic. But thank you so much for your attention. This slide are just the names of the persons that are involved in our management team, and where you have the presentations later on your desk, well, do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hans, for this excellent presentation as always. And to our audience, you can find a link to access the How to Develop a Port Community System guide that Hans shared in his presentation in the chat. Thank you so much.
Yes, no thanks. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Hervé Schneider from SOGET and IPCSA member. Thank you, Hervé, for being here. We are honored to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Monica. Effectively, thank you very much. So SOGET, as it was said previously, is a French software company that is committed to the facilitation of the international trade, ISO 27001 certified. Our core business is a port community system, and our systems are in use in the French ports as well as in Africa, in Asia, and in the Caribbean. Implementing a port community system in a country so involves various key actions, including those related to the regulatory framework. I will present also a sort of step-by-step guide to implement the PCS and that allow to address all the regulatory aspects. So the first step is to assess the regulatory environment. So it can be done beginning by conducting a comprehensive assessment of the existing regulatory framework related to port operation and data sharing. It's important to identify any legal barriers or restrictions that may impact the implementation of the PCS. This assessment will help to determine the necessary regulatory change or amendments required to facilitate the PCS implementation. The second step is to establish, I would say, a regulatory task force. Create a task force consisting of representatives from government agencies, port authorities, customs, and other relevant stakeholders. So the task force should be responsible for reviewing and proposing necessary regulatory change to support the PCS implementation. Step number 3 is to define the legal framework. So based on the assessment and on the input coming from the task force, so it's important to develop a legal framework that outlines the required regulatory change. This framework should define the scope, the objectives, and the legal provision for the PCS. So it can include data privacy, security, IP, and the dispute resolution mechanism as well. The fourth step is to do consultation and to engage the stakeholder. So consultation can be done with key stakeholders such as port authorities, government agencies, shipping lines, freight forwarders, customs, to gather feedback on the proposed legal framework. So to engage stakeholders in the decision-making process is important to ensure that their concerns and that their perspectives are addressed. Step 5 is related to draft legislation and regulation. To prepare draft legislation and regulation is important. They can incorporate the necessary changes to enable the implementation of the PCS. It's important to ensure that the proposed legal framework aligns with the international standards and the best practices as well. Step 6 is to review and to do the approval process, to submit the draft legislation and regulation to the relevant government departments. This has to be done to legislative bodies for review and for approval. This may involve coordination with lawmakers, legal experts, policymakers, to ensure that the proposed changes are understood and accepted. Step 7 is related to implementation and enforcement. Once the legislation and regulation are approved, it's important to establish a timeline for the implementation, to allocate resources, and to give responsibilities to governmental agencies, also to port authorities and other relevant entities for enforcing the new regulatory framework. It's important as well to ensure that the adequate training and support are provided to stakeholders who comply with the regulation. After this, step 8 is related to monitoring and evaluation. So it's possible to establish mechanisms to monitor the implementation of the regulatory framework and to assess its effectiveness. And to finish, continuous improvement, step 9. So it's important to maintain a proactive approach to regulatory management by continuously review and update the regulatory framework when it's needed, of course. It's important as well to stay updated with international developments and with emerging technologies to ensure that the regulatory framework remains robust and responsive to this change. So when we implement a PCS, it requires several modifications in the Customs Act, most of the time to align with the new system and to facilitate its implementation. While the specific modification can vary depending on the country and depending also on existing customs legislation, there is some common areas that may require adjustment. So the first area is related to data sharing and integration. The Customs Act may need to be updated to enable the seamless sharing of data and information between customs authorities, port stakeholders, and the PCS. So this may include provision to authorize the exchange of filtering data and the integration of custom systems with the PCS. The second area is concerning the electronic documentation. So the Customs Act may need to be amended to recognize and to accept electronic documentation, such as electronic manifest, electronic bill of lading, invoices, and other potential documents. This modification will facilitate the paperless processing of customs formalities and will also enable the use of electronic signatures and seals, if possible. The third area is related to customs declaration and to customs procedures. So the Customs Act should be revised to align the customs declaration and procedures with the requirement of the PCS. This may involve some evolution. For instance, one common evolution that is requested is that the manifest is submitted first to the PCS to be able to be distributed after to all the stakeholders, and this allows also the anticipation of the different business process related to the different import and export procedure. There is also the area related to the risk management and the selectivity. So the Customs Act may require some updates to incorporate risk management principles and to enable customs authorities to use the data and the functionalities of the PCS for effective risk assessment, for instance, and selectivity. There is also the area related to the AEO program. So if an AEO program is being implemented concurrently with the PCS, so the Customs Act may need to be modified to include provisions related to AEOs. So this may involve defining, for instance, eligibility criteria, benefits, obligation, and mutual recognition arrangements with other countries' AEOs program. There is also the post-clearance audit. So the Customs Act may require amendments to enable customs authorities to conduct post-clearance audits based on the data and information that are available in the PCS. So this modification will enhance, for example, customs control capabilities, will ensure compliance, and also will permit to deter fraudulent activities. There is also the area related to penalties and offenses. So the Customs Act may need to be updated to address any new offenses or any new penalties arising from the implementation of the PCS. So this could be related, for instance, to unauthorized access, to data manipulation, fraud, or other illegal activities associated with the use of the PCS. And to finish, there is the area related to administrative and legal procedures. So the Customs Act might require adjustment to administrative and legal procedures to accommodate the use of electronic means, electronic records, digital evidence, etc. Another thing that is important is to encourage stakeholders to use the port community system. So for that, legal constraints can be put in place to mandate or to incentivize their participation. So I will present you some potential types of legal constraints that can be considered. So the first one is mandatory participation. For that, you can implement a legal requirement that mandates specific stakeholders such as port authorities, terminal operators, customs agencies, shipping lines, and freight forwarders to use the PCS for certain activities. So this can be achieved through amendments to existing laws, to regulation, or through the introduction of new legislation. Second constraint can be a regulatory compliance. So it's possible to introduce regulation that requires stakeholders to comply with certain standards and processes facilitated by the PCS. This can include compliance, for instance, with data submission format, with timing requirement, with security protocols, and other relevant standards that can be set up by the PCS implementations. Another constraint can be the reporting obligations. So it's possible to enforce reporting obligation on stakeholders to submit specific data or information through the PCS. So this can include requirements for cargo manifest, bill of lading, custom declarations, certificates, for instance, within specified time frame, of course. There is also the constraint related to licensing or permitting. So it's possible sometimes to link the issuance or renewal of licenses, permits, or authorization to the stakeholders' compliance with the PCS usage. There can be also some financial incentives. So
because can Dagger say here that we had a business agreement? The lead stage is the so-called of the
such as reduced fee, tariff exemption, preferential treatment. So this can serve as a positive reinforcement to encourage the adoption and the compliance. Another constraint can also be related to performance monitoring. So it's possible to implement the monitoring that tracks stakeholder performance or use of the PCS. So this can include, for instance, regular audits or assessments or inspection to ensure that there is a compliance with the PCS related requirements. And of course, a non-compliance or inadequate usage may result in penalties, fines, etc. There is also the data protection and security, so it's possible to enforce legal measures to safeguard data privacy, security, IP within the PCS. And to finish, there is also the interoperability requirement. So it's possible to specify interoperability standard that stakeholders must adhere to when they want to integrate their system with the PCS. This will be allowing to ensure seamless data exchanges and compatibility among the different systems, enhancing so the effectiveness of the PCS and promoting the stakeholder participation. Of course, it's important so to strike a balance between mandating PCS usage and providing flexibility for stakeholders to adapt to the new system. Engaging stakeholders in the development of the legal constraint and seeking their input can help to foster acceptance and cooperation during the implementation process. So thank you very much for the opportunity that was given to me to give some words on the legal framework that is effectively, I think, one of the most tricky key action between the 12 key action that were highlighted by Hans before. So Monica, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hervé, for your presentation and sharing with us about this essential aspect, the regulatory framework when implementing a port community system. Thank you so much. And now I would like to continue with our last but not least speaker, Romel Edwards, Manager, Digital Innovation and Development of Barbados Port Inc. Welcome, Romel, and the floor is yours.
My friend, we cannot hear you. Perhaps your mic is still muted.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Romel.
Okay. All right, so good morning all and good afternoon and evening wherever you are located right now. Before I start, allow me to apologize for Captain Carl Branch. He had to travel, so I'm flying this mission alone. All right, so first let me introduce Barbados Port Inc. We import 90%, roughly 90% of our cargo into the island. It's very similar statistics to a lot of regions, a lot of countries in this region. We handle approximately 1,100 vessels yearly. We handle over 1.1 million tons annually. Our vision is to be the most innovative green maritime hub in the world by 2030. We have built the Caribbean's first homegrown maritime single window. We will speak to that in a bit. And we are in the process of building our own port community system. So a maritime single window. So this is a system that it conforms to the single window concept. And the single window is pretty much a system where you have a single point of submission. So all of your information goes into one location. It is a centralized hub, which means that this is also the single source that you go to retrieve information. It is the single source that you go to interact with this information, to exchange information with other entities. It will eliminate duplicitous or even multiplicitous processes. So before you have a single window, you would find yourself presenting documentation, the same information, but to several entities via separate media. So this is one of the things where a single window concept would eliminate that. The maritime single window is specific to the facilitation of maritime traffic, unlike a PCS, which again conforms to the single window concept. It has the similar objectives to a maritime single window, single point of submission, elimination of duplication, but it serves a much wider community. So instead of just customs and immigration that you would have in a maritime single window, a PCS would serve storage and logistics, so warehousing, trucking, so transport. You have the vessel agents, you have various government entities here in Barbados, for instance. You have Chamber of Commerce that is involved. There's also law enforcement and security aspect. There are aspects pertaining to the environment. So a port community system is by far more involved than a maritime single window, but they have very similar objectives, very similar parallels. My friend, the chairman from IPCSA, he would have gone into much more detail about the definition of port community system. So I will move on from here. So why did we build a maritime single window? So I'll take you back on a brief history lesson back in about 2015, 2016 or so. We were privy to a conversation where there was a vessel captain. He was extremely irate at the amount of documents that he had to submit to the port of Bridgetown on arrival and again on departure. And in our investigations, we realized that each vessel comes to Barbados and had to submit somewhere between 15 to 20 documents. And some of these documents, there were multiple copies. But what we also noticed that disturbed us was that these documents all asked for more or less the same information. So every time the vessel came to Barbados, you had to be supplying the vessel's IMO number. IMO number is not going to change ever. So, but yet you are supplying this IMO number every time you come to Barbados. The vessel's name, it can change, but it's not a regular change. The type of vessel. So you have a vessel coming to Barbados as a cruise vessel. It is not one day going to show up as a cargo vessel. It's a cruise vessel. It will likely always remain a cruise vessel. So you have a lot of information that we kept asking captains or the vessel agents to submit to us. And they had to do this on every single arrival, every single departure. So we decided, no, this cannot continue. And we wanted to streamline this process. We also realized the huge amount of paper that this was producing. So again, that was a boon to us. Now, along the way, we caught wind of what Antigua was doing. So we reached out to our friends in Antigua and they pointed us to their source code. We would have taken a look at that source code and we realized that Antigua was actually solving the same problem in their country that we were solving in Barbados. And this brought us to a realization. The experiences that we were having in Barbados were not unique to Barbados. They were not even unique to Antigua. This is a worldwide port issue. And this also took us on our journey to the IMO. Now, Barbados is a member state of the IMO and we are signatory to the FAL Convention. So when we caught wind of the FAL Convention, what we did was that while we were developing our maritime single window, we also were developing legislation so that we can have that FAL Convention enshrined in our laws. Why are we building a port community system? Well, to address similar problems that the maritime single window will address, but on a wider scale. So whereas the maritime single window addresses the efficiencies as it pertains to maritime traffic, the port community system addresses the same inefficiencies, but as it pertains to trade facilitation. And once you address trade facilitation, then you address your ease of doing business. So it makes Barbados a competitive region. It makes our port very competitive, very price friendly, and we attract greater traffic. What we envision is a greater reduction in costs, and these costs will be passed on then to the end user, to the consumer. Your PCS has a by far larger audience than your maritime single window, and your end users actually include your general public. So that consumer that's going into your supermarkets, that consumer that's going into a clothing store, all of that is part of your trade, or that's part of your trade flow. And once you can reduce costs in the facilitation of trade, those costs are passed on to your end user, vis-a-vis that consumer, and you can actually have a reduction in the cost of living. So we embarked on this port community system. We know how important a port is to especially small island developing states like Barbados. We embarked on this. What we also realize is that we have already built a lot of the core pillars that you would find in a port community system. So we already have an e-payment platform. We already have a cargo tracking module. We already have an electronic manifest module which interfaces with customs as secluded. So we already have a lot of the components that you would expect to be in a port community system. So it made sense to just continue building on what we were already doing properly. So why are these projects separate? Well, first of all, they address separate mandates. So our maritime single window addresses the mandates and concerns that the IMO would have articulated. So the IMO is concerned about vessel delays, the IMO is concerned about vessel turnaround times, IMO is concerned about emissions. You will actually see a lot more messages coming from the International Maritime Organization on things like emissions and environment. So our maritime single window seeks to address this. Actually, if I had more time, I'd actually give you a video demo, but one of the things that we have incorporated into our maritime single window is something called just in time. And it is still something we are working on tweaking, but we use satellite tracking. So this is AIS. We also use information coming from out of Lloyd's database, and this pertains to the vessel's bearing and its velocity, its distance from port. And you can actually instruct a vessel to speed up or slow down so that it arrives just in time to an awaiting berth. And this is one of the concerns and one of the objectives that the International Maritime Organization wanted to address. The port community system, however, addresses trade concerns. There are very similar parallels. So we are speaking of turnaround times. We are also speaking of emissions. So if you have a lot of trucks in your port, that is an emissions issue. It's also a noise issue. But these concerns are now concerns that have been highlighted by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. It has also been highlighted by the World Trade Organization, so the WTO. So we have different target audiences as well. As I would have stated earlier, your PCS would target a larger audience, whereas your maritime single window is maritime vessel specific. So how do these two systems interact? So what we first attempted to address was our data harmonization, and that is extremely important. If you're going to exchange data between systems, it has to be done intelligently. It does not make sense exchanging all of the data you have. You just exchange that data that is needed. And in order to facilitate this exchange, you have to first harmonize, make sure that what data means in one system has the same meaning and the same effect in the other system. And this harmonization is not just between the two systems, but also between the stakeholders, because you're going to have, for instance, a major stakeholder, which is customs. Customs plays a part in both the maritime single window and the port community system. So you have this exchange and this harmonization that has to be done between customs and other stakeholders, such as immigration, other stakeholders, such as the vessel agents, stakeholders, such as transport. So you need this harmonization to be in place, and then this makes the data exchange by far easier. The other thing that we looked to address was workflow management. Now, if you look at your entire trade flow, on island trade flow. You would imagine a vessel coming into your port with cargo, and that is where, as far as the island is concerned, your trade would start. However, this vessel coming into the port, this flow, this part of the flow is handled within the maritime single window. And then as cargo is discharged from this vessel, then you would have information that has to flow now from the maritime single window into your port community system. So it's all about this flow of information from one system to the next, which has to be managed. It has to be managed smoothly and intelligently. When you have your cargo leaving Barbados or leaving wherever you are, then this flow now goes in the opposite direction. So you would have information in your port community system, and that has to transfer into your maritime single window so that that vessel can now be cleared to depart from your port. And the information that is in your maritime single window as an export could easily become the import information for another maritime single window at the next port of call. And that is actually an exercise that we fully envision will happen in the Caribbean, where the export information from one state in the Caribbean will be the import information for another state. Then we have information sharing. You have two systems that have several stakeholders. So information sharing is paramount. We come from an era where everyone works for their own entity. So in the port, we're accustomed just doing work within the port. In customs, they're accustomed to doing work within customs. And, there was like a culture where people would just hold on to their information, almost like territory. But that has gone through, that is dissipated now. There's no information sharing, and this is extremely important for these systems to interact and to work. And of course, with information sharing, you have security, you have compliance issues. So these are all issues which you will need to address in order to be successful in this endeavor. So along the way, we would have had challenges, we would have had benefits. And one of our main challenges, which my dear friend Hans would have spoken to earlier, is change management. You need your stakeholder buy-in from the start, throughout the entire process, all the way to the end. So there's a change management issue. You had to make changes to the way some business processes work. So part of this change management involved business process engineering. And this is where you would take a business process and you will remove any unnecessary parts of that process, or sometimes you completely discard it. There are other times where you may actually introduce a new business process. There's also labor. One of our labor challenges were, people being afraid of being made redundant, but we were able to retool a lot of those individuals. So at least that is something we were able to address. We were able to address, fear, uncertainty, doubt amongst our labor force. The other thing is that when you introduce these single window systems, there is a gradual change, but there's a migration from unskilled labor to skilled labor. And when I was in PMAC last week or week before, there was actually this discussion, where your terminal worker is not necessarily a big, tall, muscular person who's just full of strength. You actually have this transition now where your terminal worker can be anyone, but they need specific skills. So this was one of the areas that we had to address. And of course, cybersecurity. If you have these interconnected systems with several stakeholders, then a breach at one stakeholder puts the entire community at risk. So we had to address cybersecurity issues. We also had to address legislation. What would normally obtain is that you would have several acts. You would have a customs act, immigration act, Port Act, a Health Act, and this legislation would often be antiquated, first of all, and then secondly, it just addresses those entities separately. So there were two options. You introduce new legislation, which we will call umbrella legislation, and this legislation would seek to address the variances between the different individual acts. The other way you can do it is to actually revise the Customs Act and revise the Port Act and revise all of the other acts so that they are now in sync, because this legislation has to support these systems that you have these various entities interacting with, and all these entities have their own laws. So you have to make sure that if you want these entities to interact and to be in sync within your single window, that the supporting legislation is also in sync. Now, for the benefits, we have had reduced costs. So we've actually seen that. We've seen shorter turnaround times. We're still working to reduce those times some more, but we have seen a reduction in the turnaround times. There's a culture change where we have a lot more collaboration and information sharing. So you no longer have to go to a specific entity to get specific information. Once you have access to our single window systems and you have the correct privileges, so again, we're speaking to cybersecurity, then that information is literally at your fingertips. And then, of course, this is the environmental impact. This is not just emissions, but the environmental impact also deals with noise pollution. So the shorter time that a vessel stays in port, the less emissions you have to tolerate, the less noise you have to tolerate. So then there's impact for the marine environment as well. Then there's also impact for waste. So these are all benefits that we would have seen from this system development. And then some key takeaways. So you're going down this road, I would encourage you, I would advise, I would strongly recommend that you engage your external neutral experts. These would be legal experts, these would be technical experts, these would be cybersecurity experts. And I would take this time, to say a big shout out to my friends at the Organization of American States and the OASIC. They were instrumental in the journey that Barbados took on developing these systems. The thing about external experts is that they have the capacity to influence your local stakeholders. So they don't have any affiliations with anyone on island. They have the capacity then to influence your stakeholders because they're not. I don't want to say they're not friends because we're all friends. No, but their opinions, their reports, everything is just factual. It's based on pure expertise. So I would encourage you to engage your external experts. Do not reinvent the wheel. So for us, Barbados was in a unique state where we had already built several of our components for our port community system. There are other components that we are actually going to incorporate, but we don't necessarily have to build them from scratch. It would not be wise to. So just look at your situation and whatever you're doing, you have to decide, if you're going to incorporate, but there are a lot of instances where you do not need to reinvent the wheel. Someone up there has done it before you. Do not implement in a silo. So again, you collaborate, right? So we did not implement our cybersecurity in a silo. So I have to show my friends at Hudson Analytics. They were also instrumental in our implementation. With the Maritime Single Window, when I had attended the PMAC conference 2 weeks ago, I sat with the team from Antigua and we had some very great discussions. It's not the first time that we collaborated, but again, you need, lean on people's shoulders, take advice from others who have gone down the road. I also have to make mention of the IPCSA. It is one of the best decisions that Barbados ever made to join this organization. Hans, thank you. Nico, thank you. So the IPCSA, there's a wealth of information. It's a wealth of information. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, thank you as well. There's a wealth of information at the IPCSA. So, don't do this alone. You have people you can lean on. These systems are not fits all. So, you choose your goals, choose them strategically, choose them carefully, choose attainable goals. It is not something that will cure every problem you have. There are some problems actually outside of the scope of a PCS. There are problems that are outside of the scope of a maritime single window. And as Hans would have said earlier, stakeholder engagement, cannot stress it enough. Your entire project can be easily derailed if you do not engage your stakeholders and get that buy-in from beginning and from all the way to the end. You would have had several stakeholder engagement meetings, sensitization meetings, and I would recommend anyone going on this path to do exactly that. And so that brings me to the end of my presentation. So again, I say to everyone, thank you.
Thank you so much, Romel, for this amazing presentation. The successful implementation of your PCS is truly an example to the port community, and the CP is really happy to have contributed to this project as well. Thank you so much. And thank you as well to all the wonderful speakers that we had today. And now I would like to continue with our Q&A session and to invite all of our speakers to join me in the screen so we can start, please. Excellent. Thank you so much. And our first question is for Nico. Do ports need to have a PCS in place to become a member of IPCSA? Or how can ports and port authorities also benefit or have added value in becoming an IPCSA member?
Yeah, thank you, Monica, for this question. And also thank you, Romel, for your kind words on IPCSA before. The short answer on your question, Monica, is no. It's very simple, no. And it doesn't, you don't need to have everything in place before you want to join us and become a member. I think the MSW regulation of the IMO is a good example for that. A lot of ports and port authorities are now looking to what they need to do on that maritime single window regulation. But we have the expertise in our association. So you can make use of that. If you join us, you can make use of our expertise and our knowledge both on maritime single window environments and port community systems. So the IPCSA membership has actually already advantages as from day one. If you want to set up your maritime single window or port community system digital ecosystem, I think the example of Romel with Barbados Port is a very nice example of that. I think he has put it very accurate and concise. Don't reinvent the wheel. The expertise and the knowledge is present within the association. And we can go along with any one of you on this journey on setting up a PCS or a maritime single window. So I hope that this webinar also has shown the audience of this added value. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nico. Our next question is for Javier. Can you put some examples how PCS are contributing to reduce environmental impact and CO2 footprint?
Thank you, Monica. In fact, with more information and in advance, with advanced information, we are able to have better planification of the physical operation. Just a few examples will be with the information in advance. We may reduce the state of the vessels in our piers. We also, the waiting time for the haulage transportation in order to pick up a container may be reduced with information that we are informing to the terminal when are these drivers going to pick up. So then the terminals may make better plans to allocate the resources to give it the container or the goods in the right time. Another example, for instance, that we have eliminated a lot of trips for fetching and grabbing documents from one side to another. There was our port in the past was full of motor drivers running up and down, fetching documents, and now all these useless trips has been totally eliminated because we are a paperless port. That's an example how the PCS and sending this information in advance and digitalizing documents have a great impact as the results of our study give us the 30% of the total emission has been reduced in the last 10 years.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Javier. Our next question is for Hans. Hans, your presentation focuses mainly on change management. Is there a documentation about best practices available that can help us set up change management?
Yes, well, for myself, I would say it was learn by doing. but that's because of my age. It's already started in the 70s, and change management has been my passion for all my life to work together with people. But saying that, there are a lot of methodologies. You can find them on when you Google for change management, you'll find a lot. But the ones that I focus most on, and that when it is asked by other PCS developments, I always say, look at Kotter, Professor Kotter. Kotter's book. Kotter's book is written in 1995 already. It's called Leading Changes, and the other one is Bridges. And the difference between Kotter's and Bridges, although you need them both actually, is that Kotter's is look to the change, what was and what is, while Bridges is look to transition, and transition is about the people, the mindset of the people. They are used to a certain process that will be ending. Then they come in a so-kind neutral zone to say, I know what I had, but I don't know what I'm get, right? And then the new beginnings. So that's really the people mindset that you need to take care of. That's Bridges. And Kotter's is to change. What was, what will it be, etc., etc. And Kotter's, when you read the book or read the ins and outs, and you can find also some information on Google very easily. It's 8 steps. It's create the urgencies up to the moment that you anchor the changes into the corporate culture. So there's a long way to go, but it's good to have those steps in mind. Use them as you go for PCS developments. You can make a tick box out of it. Say, did I do this? Did I do that? Didn't I forget some steps? Because when you forget a certain step, you will be punished, or you will be stroked back by the stakeholders. Say, hey, you forgot to mention this or that. So Kotter's and Bridges, and well, that is what I'm using as much as possible, and also advise to our members.
Thank you so much, Hans. Our next question is for Hervé. How many time does it take in average for having a compliant legal framework with a port community system?
The time it takes to establish a compliant legal framework for a port community system can vary, I think, depending on several factors. So including, for instance, the complexity of the system, the jurisdiction in which it will be implemented, the legal requirement also specific to the port and the maritime industry, and also the resources available for the implementation process. So developing a compliant legal framework for a PCS involves various legal considerations. So it can be data privacy and protection, electronic transaction, intellectual property right, customs and trade regulations. So, and also the involvement, I think, of multiple stakeholders, including port authorities, shipping companies, customs agencies, etc., can add complexity to the process. So I think that the time frame for establishing a compliant legal framework for a PCS can range perhaps from several months to a couple of years.
Thank you so much, Hervé.
You're welcome.
And thank you. And our last question is for Romel. What advice would you give to other small island developing states looking to implement their MSW and PCS?
So you have to weigh, the pros and cons, like how much do you have already? How much do you need to add? And then you have to look into, your expertise at hand. So do you have the technical capacity to do this, or do you need to outsource? You also look at your legal capacity, like what do you have in place already? So it all comes down to a matter of building versus buying, but you just weigh what you have, what you don't have. With our case in Barbados, because we had done so much development prior to even calling it a port community system. So we had several projects that would have developed that we, at the time, did not realize that these would form a part of a port community system. So because we realized that we had built so much of our PCS, it made sense for us to continue building. For another state, it may make sense, it may not. But again, if you're going to do this, do not do it in a silo, do not reinvent the wheel. There are bodies of knowledge out there. Consult your neighbors. We would have had a consultation with Jamaica. I forgot to mention them in our presentation, but we would have visited Kingston Wharves, we would visit Jamaica, we would have visited Felixstowe in England. I went over to my dear friend Hans in Rotterdam. I missed out on seeing Javier because I was actually in Valencia. But again, you know, we visited different ports and we learned. So I would advise any member state to also do the same, you know, learn from others and just look at what you have, what you need, and make that decision.
Thank you so much, Romel. And thank you to all of today's speakers. It has been an honor to moderate this webinar on how to implement a port community system. Thank you again, and Jorge, back to you.
Thank you very much, Monica, and thank you to our speakers. I see that Inga Morton has joined us. I know that she was otherwise occupied earlier. So I would like to give Inga the floor for some comments here. So as you all know, Inga Morton is the general manager of IPCSA. So Inga, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. It was really my honor and pleasure to hear all those fruitful discussions. And I really do hope that this will be the way forward for those ports and port authorities who hadn't made decision yet to develop the port community system or are on the way under the consideration. We as International Port Community Systems Association would like to highlight that we are here. We are just email or phone call away. You can approach us. Our membership, as our Secretary General was highlighting earlier, is open to port authorities regardless of their stage of digitalization, and they do not need to have the port community system indeed in place. Yeah, it was really good insight, and of course we are very, very pleased with our member in Barbados and are looking forward to strengthen our regional presence in future. And thank you, SIP, for organizing this good event and providing us a platform to speak about port community systems.
Indeed, Inga, thank you very much for your support. And I would like to thank all our presenters. I think Javier opened up with a great presentation, talking about the PCS, that is open to all actors, that it increases traceability in the process, that makes the process more secure because it is now digital, that it does save money and there's savings in time and there's savings in efficiency. And as we saw, those efficiencies, it also have an impact in sustainability and in reducing the carbon footprint of the trucks that are now waiting less time and the ship. So this was very opening a presentation, very good. Thank you, Javier, so much. Hans, what I took away from your is obviously the several steps that need to be taken before one implements a port community system or a maritime single window, or any sort of technological initiative. The governance part, the importance of that, and of course the change management. As we all know, we humans are naturally resistant to change, and so are organizations, and so are ports and terminals. And so this is something that is very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. That point of view of there will be change. We here, a few of us went from no computers and doing our research on our university, with the index cards, all manual. So there's always resistance to change. But I got from your presentation that one of the solutions or one of the things that can help us is to have a very efficient and communication between the different parties. Now, Hervé obviously came here with the regulatory and the legal framework. I appreciate your presentation. I think it was very clear, your slides, and and the trouble, the problematic issue that this could be, because of course you are not necessarily amending existing legislation, but you're actually having to create new legislation for data protection, for electronic signature, for all these processes that will now take place. And you, my friend, said something very important and mentioned customs. And customs, as we all know, is an integral part of the process. But in my experience, because customs and ports that belong to different ministries, there is some communication and bridge building that needs to be done between the Port Authority and the port and customs, so that this type of initiative can work well. So thank you for that. And then Romel, very interesting, very clear presentation on the differences between a maritime single window for customs and in-time coming of the ships and that to the port community system that sort of expands that view to the logistics, to the transportation, to the transport agency, the storage and so forth. One done to create trade facilitation in the country, the other one more of an efficient system of coming and departing with the ships. And here my last two notes are that let's remember, everyone, that your PCS can grow, that you don't need to have a fully, completely working PCS in order to start. You can start with small, different components, create a maritime single window that suits your needs, that is developed by you, hopefully, to suit your needs. And then that components can be added to that to grow it. So in that sense, congratulations. And finally, my last comment on this for everybody's consumption is that if digitalization of processes helps us avoid human errors by not having to write the same information that Romel was talking about, whether it's the IMO number or the manifest of the ship, and writing it multiple times, this can lead to errors, to human errors. It can also lead to corruption, and it can also lead to not being honest on these documents. So once you digitize and everything, you secure, you get rid of that. But as we get rid of human error, we open ourselves to cyber attack. We open ourselves to a different kind of danger, a different kind of, which Romel mentioned as well as some of our presenters, the issue of cyber. So my recommendation here would be that as you move ahead with your digitalization projects, as you move forward with modernization, please consider cybersecurity from the very beginning. It is important that the architecture of whatever you are constructing includes the cybersecurity component from the get-go. I've seen cases where they had, and then they try to get the cyber in, and it's a patch, really, and it's not organic to the design of the original architecture, and it doesn't work as well. So my last piece of advice, if I have any, because of course the experts are you all, is to consider that cyber. So with that, I'm going to now thank everybody, and I'm going to give you all the floor for you to say a quick thank you and goodbye. Let me start in the order that I have them here, but I will finish with Inga so that she can give us the closing words for PCSA. So Romel, my friend, some goodbyes and closing thoughts here. Thank you.
Well, thank you to the OAS. We are always eager to work with you. Thank you to the IPCSA. It has been a pleasure being on board with you as well. We have several colleagues also on this call. So our friends from Jamaica, friends from Antigua, thank you for the collaboration along the way. Thank you also for the other countries who have offered their input. And, Jorge, you know to find me. So once you call, Barbados will answer.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ambassador Rook, please, would you be so kind?
Yes, it was really very, very interesting to hear also my colleagues from IPCSA about the various subjects, but I'm very much impressed again about the setup of the whole seminar by yourself, by Monica today, moderating the whole thing. And it's very strange not to hear Mona. I know she's online, but I didn't hear her voice this time. But Monica, perfectly done. Thank you so much. And also for you, Jorge. I hope to see you in August or later this year again by our news next webinar. And of course, Rommel, well, we know it's already for a long time. And our Iceman, Kami Linton in the first instance, starting with her. And it's a long, long story in the meantime. And I still have my socks, my Barbados socks. And when I visit you, I will bring them. But I like to wear them because I want to be with my bare foot in the sandy beach. Right? Thank you so much for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. Indeed, Mona is around, and thank you for your comments. Thank you very, very much. We try to do our best. In fact, let me, before I give the word to Nico, the floor to Nico, let me tell you that as you all know, this is part one of a two-part series with IPCSA. We will be announcing the date of the next webinar shortly, but it certainly will be in August or at the latest September, because we want to keep the momentum going. And I'll have you know that we had 170 participants between the people here in Zoom and the people watching us on the YouTube transmission or broadcast, as it should be said. So thank you all. Nico, some words?
Yeah. My main words go to you and Monica to thank SIP for this wonderful job and hosting this very informative webinar, giving IPCSA the opportunity to share our knowledge and expertise as together with the experts towards the audience that was here. I think it was a very big audience. The numbers you were mentioning, the countries you were mentioning, I think we certainly can speak of a great success. And we are, of course, looking forward to the part two.
Excellent. Thank you, Nico, very much. I now move to Hervé Schneider. Please, some parting words.
Yes, thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to participate to this webinar. That was very interesting to have the view of the different experts, and the Barbados experience sharing was very interesting as well. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you also very much for the organization. That was really perfect.
Well, thank you. I must then thank and pass your thanks on to the team, to, as we know, the SIP Dream Team. And of course, Monica is an integral part of that. So Monica, well done, everyone, including myself, of course, is very happy with the organization of the webinar. Javier, querido amigo, antes de pasarle a Inga la palabra.
Gracias, Jorge. Well, first of all, thank you, all of you, for this marvelous webinar. It's been very, very interesting and fruitful for me. Just want to say what Inga has already said, that IPSCA is a young association. We consider very practical and dynamic, and we are here to support you when you decide, whenever you want, just to join us. So we used to say that IPSCA is a big family. You are more than welcome to join us. And I hope that you will knock at the door and say, we want to be there. We want to set up a PCS, and we will be very, very pleased to help you on this way. And thank you so much, all of you, for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you all. I see Troy Vest. I see many people that I know in the over 150 people that were here before, and thank you all for your participation, Patricia Persad. And there's many people that I know, and that I thank you for your attention, and that along with the presenters, we are very happy and very satisfied with the development of this webinar, because it was full of useful information. It was certainly done. It was very well explained. So we're very, very happy. And with that, I turn it over to my friend Inga Morton for some closing words from my PCSA.
Thank you. Actually, event was so good that there is a very little you can add to all those nice words has been expressed, and this really good vibe of energy in the room. It was absolutely brilliant, and I would like to thank all the participants and to looking forward to see you on the next round. And if you do have any questions, we are just an email or phone call away. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Inga. Thank you all for your support. Indeed, they are just an email away. If you need to contact them and you don't know how, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to make the connection with Barbados or IPCSA. Again, be advised, we will be organizing the second part to this wonderful webinar in the next couple of months. So until then, thank you very much. I remind you that with the permission of the presenters, we will upload, once this webinar finishes in the next couple of hours, we will upload both the recording and the presentations in the SIP portal for everybody to be able to consult. I will see you the next time. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, my utmost thanks to the team, to the presenters, and of course, to the audience, to the public why we do this for. So thank you all. We'll see you soon. Until the next, hasta la próxima.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.